We start with, to my right, Mr. Bart Somers from the Flemish Liberal Democrats, and who is currently the mayor of the town of Mechelen. And the reason I invited him is that there was an issue in Mechelen where Catholic hospitals invoked the right to conscientious objection in order to refuse to provide abortion services. Then we will listen to Mrs. Monika Karbowska from Poland, who is going to tell us about the recent cases in Poland, about the Polish abortion law, but also the case of Amelia, and I'm afraid I have difficulty with her last name, but who had a very famous case before the Strasbourg Court as well. Then we will be listening to Mr. Henk Baars from my own country, who is also the European coordinator of Catholics for Choice, who will explain to us what the situation is in the Netherlands, where we have where we are well known, I would say, for having very advanced liberal abortion laws, but which seem to have come under pressure as well recently, and surprisingly. And that is not entirely unrelated to the fact that we had an Orthodox Christian party in government. And finally, we will listen with great interest to Mrs. Amelia Sanchis Vidal, who is going to explain to us what the power, the influences of the church in Spain, where there is also a hot debate on abortion rights.
My country has a very liberal legislation concerning abortion, one of the most liberal of Europe. Since the law of 3 April 1990, every woman in my country has the right on an abortion until 12 weeks, in fact without any real problem, and after 12 weeks after the conception in specific situations. So it's a very liberal legislation that gives the woman the right to decide on her own. And the second element of this legislation is that a medicine, a doctor, has the right to act in such in an abortion or not. It is his conscience who decides if he, yes or no, will cooperate with an abortion when it's asked. We have a very liberal legislation, but healthcare is traditionally private enterprise and run by Catholic organizations. For, let's say, 70–80% of all hospitals and all healthcare institutes are historically from out of a Catholic origin, and they are run by the Catholic Church, of elements of the Catholic Church. And they try to not adapt that legislation in their hospitals. In my town, we had 2 hospitals. We had a public hospital, where the legislation was normally respected, and we had a Catholic hospital who didn't respect the legislation. How do they do that? In fact, they use pressure on the medicines, on the doctors in their hospital, try to prevent them to act in an abortion, how do you say, in an abortion situation. So they prohibited their doctors to act in that way. And when doctors wanted to do that, they could lose their job. They always found excuses to prohibit it in their hospital. In practice, it wasn't a problem, because we had 2 hospitals. So, pragmatic as we are, in Belgium, we say, okay, we have a public hospital, and we have also a Catholic hospital, but principally, of course, it's against the law what those Catholic hospitals did. Now, what's the problem? Of course, like in every country, we have a scale that's becoming bigger in hospitals, and if you have 70 or 80% of the markets, and there are fusions, in more and more parts of my country, there is a monopoly of the Catholic Church concerning hospitals and healthcare. And also in my town, there was a fusion between the public hospital and the Catholic hospital. And the doctors who operated in the public hospital were taken over by the Catholic Church, by the Catholic hospital, run by elements of the Catholic Church, and they were prohibited from one day to another to do abortions in the hospital. So we spent, in my town, 150 million euros to build a new hospital. It's money of the taxpayers, to build a new Catholic hospital. That's the only hospital in my town. where now there is a policy that if a woman wants to have an abortion, she can't go to that hospital. So what have I done as a mayor locally? I took the initiative together with my board of aldermen to try to create an own abortion center in my town. I think it's necessary in practice, but it's also symbolically very important that the government doesn't accept the fact that in my town, women, can't have an abortion. And that's in a country with a very liberal abortion legislation. So it's maybe the contraposition of Ireland. We have a very liberal legislation, but in practice it's prohibited to do by organizations subsidized for 100% by the state, but run by the Catholic Church.
Catholic for Choice is a global organization, and it works for a long time also with your commission, by Elfriede Hart. Now I'm on, and it's a bit difficult because Elfriede was very good, and she's very good at this moment too, of course. But I'm trying. We have, I said it, we have a long history with each other. I am very active in the Catholic world, also international. It's not very easy to be a Catholic at this moment. Because also in Holland now we face many pedophilia cases, and it's awful to read in the papers every day to see. No, I cannot do nothing about it, only ask for a good commission who is searching for the right things to do. But I'm very ashamed of it, and I think when you are a progressive Catholic, it's very nasty to have that kind of things in your church.
So two things which I think are important at the start. You also said very often secularism is confused with anti-clericalism. Very often when you criticize religious institutions, immediately you're being accused of being anti-clerical, which I think is not the case, as our friends of Catholics for Free Choice would agree. And the second thing, you mentioned at some point freedom of expression, and that reminds me that that churches, and the Catholic Church in particular, do not only control institutions, but of course individual politicians, lawmakers, Catholic lawmakers, are of course also at the bottom of the hierarchy of the church, and in that sense there is also a relation of power between the church and individual politicians, which isn't always transparent, and it's certainly not always healthy. I think that it's definitely worth dedicating another session to this subject sometime in the not too distant future. So I promise you that we will do that. Please send us your background material, and we will compose a parliamentary question. Thank you very much for coming, and hope to see you next time. Hi, Elfriede.